And welcome everyone to the final video for the year 2022, the Minneapolis Northwestern N-Scale Model Railroad monthly video. This month's project, as you can see, is a little Christmas tree for the layout. I started out with a little breadboard setup here just to test the circuitry and get an idea of what the lights are going to look like here. It's a real simple setup. It's just a matter of using 12 LEDs and their appropriate resistors all plugged into the digital ports on a Arduino Nano board. I use pins 2 through 13 to operate all the little LEDs. And here's a quick look at the code. We'll start out with that real quick. The setup, I just used a for loop to go through all the pins and set up the pin modes as output for all the pins. And down in the loop, I've got some little procedures that I used to call various light routines. And I used a random function here, so it's initializing the integer z, and could be anything from 1 to 7. So these procedures are called at random, picking a random number. And from here I go to a switch case. We're using the random number z here, and I'm calling either light 1, light 2, so on, all the way down to light 6. These are just names of little procedures I used to animate the lights. And light 1, we basically do a for loop. We're going through all the lights 2 through 14 here, setting them high, and then using the little random function to also light up lights either 1 through 5, a random number, light x plus the random 1 through 5, light up another light, or x minus a random number 1 through 5. And this way it's lighting up 3 lights real briefly, and it works through the 2 through 14, lighting up all the lights. I did use 13, but for some reason I wasn't getting the 13th light to light up, so I used up 2 to 14. That way I was getting all the lights. And then we turn off the lights. Once we turn them on, we'll turn them off real quick. And the next procedure here, the next function, light 2, pretty much the same as the first one, only we're going from 2 to 14. We're going from 14 to 2, just going backward through the chain. And again, using a little random function there to kind of randomize the light pattern, and makes for a nice effect on the little tree. The next one, light 3, we're using lighting up 6 lights, again at random. 6 random lights are being lit, and then we turn off all the lights at the bottom of the procedure there. So also you'll notice in the for loop we're doing this anywhere from 20 to 200 times, and it goes pretty quick. Again, kind of randomizing which lights will show up. You might want to adjust that if you don't want to go 200 times. I don't think it lasts very long. I think it's one of the better sequences because it kind of randomly lights up lights on the tree, so you may want to adjust it a little bit. And finally get down to light 4, and it's just all these little things are just different ways of lighting up the trees. You're going through the loop again, randomly setting how many times we're going to do this, 2 to 10 times, and then walk through the for loop again, 2 to 14, and we're just lighting them, turning them off, and then turning them on, 1 light at a time. Just little random sequences here for operating the lights. Then we move down to light 5. Again, just fiddling around with different ways to operate the lights. Oops, got that out of the way. Excuse me. There we go. Again, this is just lighting up the lights real quick, just going through random. Again, we're saying for 2 to 20 times we're going to walk through the lights again, 2 to 14. We're going to turn it off and then turn it on. So all this does is turns off all the lights and then turns them back on. We walk back through the loop and we turn the light on. The delay times are kind of quick here, so it has kind of a sparkly effect on the tree. But that's all we're doing, just running through the loops, playing with different lighting arrangements. And finally down here on light 6, whoops, sorry, I got my stuff in the way again there. Finally down here on light 6, again it's a random number of times, 2 through 20. Again, we walk through the loop, 2 to 14, and we're turning off the light. Then we go to a turning off the light again. It's a random number x plus a random number 1 through 5. So we're just randomly turning lights on and off, and we're going to have real short delays. So again, this is kind of a sparkly effect. And we go from from 14 to 2. So now we're going down the loop. Instead of up the numbers, we're going down the numbers, doing pretty much the same thing. So it's real simple, just fiddling around with different aspects of the code. And here's my little cluster of little LEDs that I plan to use on the tree itself. The tree I've got was something I got out of a pack of trees I got a long time ago, a nice little evergreen tree, and I just very carefully took all these lights, using about 12 lights, and very carefully with tweezers just kind of pushed them, worked them deep into the tree so I could try to hide the wires and arrange the lights as evenly as I can on just such a little tree. So it's just a process of working the wires into the branches, deep into the tree, try to hide the wires as much as I can and distribute the lights as evenly as I can. And here's a little test, see if how they look here. Try to turn off the lights on my work table there and hide the mess at the same time. So lights are looking pretty good here. You can see some of the random patterns in there. The wires still need to be a little work here. Try to push the wires in a little more, try to hide them a little more. But mostly they weren't too noticeable. Unless you get a real strong light on them, then you can see them pretty easy still. But worked on trying to hide the wires and get all the lights working, and starting to look pretty good. Almost looks like a real tree. Now for the base of the tree, I took a drinking straw and put a big shot of hot glue at the base of the tree inside the straw, and that way I was able to push that straw up underneath the tree and get the base of the tree and all the wires all gathered up nice and neat in that little bundle. And for decorations on the tree, what else? Same thing you use on the cake. Now this was kind of a fun process here. Okay, I used a little drop of canopy glue, probably about 4 times more than I needed, and the tweezers, and put the little balls on the tree. Oh boy, little Christmas balls on the tree. I had to be careful here because if they stayed in the glue too long, they'd start to melt. Okay, let's see, how about this pink one here? We'll try that one. A little dip in the glue, and on the tree it stuck to the tweezers. Oh, it stuck to the straw. Okay, well, let's try another one. Yeah, put about, I don't know, a few of those balls on there, as many as I felt like working with. Just wanted to briefly go over the setup I did with the little nano board to plug in all the little LEDs. I used a bit of these little breakaway sockets here, and plugged that in from digital pins 2 through 12 to get my lights. So that kind of plugged in like so, kind of, sort of. And for digital pin 13, which was on the other side, I used a small piece of a jumper cable that snipped off there, and just a real short piece. And then I used another piece of breakaway, and between that I used several resistors between these points. So I got kind of a little setup kind of like this with all the resistors, and this 13 pin went down to the other end here. And I also used, I didn't know I could do this, but I used for the power, I used the VIN in pin here, if you can see that VIN in right next to the ground. So I made a little plug to these pins here, and that way I could get my power in there. I thought I had to plug in something here, but I didn't know I could do that. So I figured out something new and used these two pins for my power. So that's the little gadget I came up with for connecting all the LEDs to the nano board. And then I used a bit of hot glue and a piece of sheet or strip styrene, and just glued it on the back of this piece. Take that off so it's a little more clear, you can see it. I just used some hot glue and glued this piece right on there, and then I was able to put some screws through here and fasten it to the underside of the board. So that's what's holding it to the underside of the board. So kind of a crude explanation for what I did for my setup here. So I just wanted to briefly go over that in case there was some confusion about that. These are the LEDs that I used on the tree, various colors. These happen to be orange, and you can see the voltage requirements on those. The very small LEDs are nice for little projects like this, very tiny. And you might want to experiment with the resistors that you use for these. I think I used 220 ohm resistors for pretty much all of them, except for the green lights. The green lights tend to be a little bright, so you might want to use a little stronger resistance there. And the blue light that I had turned out to be kind of dim, so I used less resistance on that one to try to equalize the brightness of the lights. So do a little experimenting and to get the look you want. So there's I'll put a link below for the LEDs. I got these off Amazon, so pretty cheap. I'll put a link in the description box below for those. Another little trick I did for all the wires coming off the LEDs, they're very fine wires. What I do is I'll take a little pin right out of these slots here. Now I've got just a separate pin, and I used a little bit of solder, and I'd solder my LED wire right to that pin, and then just use a little shrink tubing around that, so you get a little connection that looks something like that. And that's how I made all my connections to the LEDs, and I'm able to then plug that into the little sockets here. And I did it that way so that I could get all the wires. There's about about 13, 14 wires through the board, and doing it this way I was able to fit them all into a drinking straw, and able to use the straw to push all the wires down through the hole I drilled in the layout to get them all underneath the board. And then once they're under the board, I plug them all into the nano board. So another little trick I did, these little pins can be pulled out, and they make for nice connections that way. So I couldn't fit, of course, this great big thing through a hole on the board. I'd have to have a pretty large hole for that. So this was my solution, was to use these little tiny pins and small wires, and then I managed to fit them into a drinking straw to push them through the hole in the layout. So here we see the nearly finished tree and all the wires coming out of the bottom there, all plugged into my little gadget to connect to the nano board. You can see all the resistors there, that one wire coming off of the digital 13 pin, the green wire there, and then the power, the 4.5 volt power coming into the VIN pin and the ground pin right there. And that the strip of styrene there for attaching it to the board. And here we are under the board. Got all the wires down through that little hole. There's my power supply, 4.5 volt power supply coming in, and screws on either side there to attach it to the bottom. And here's all my all my wires coming out of there. And you can see all the resistors in there. Note the one wire on the far right there is the ground wire. There's no resistor on that, so that's just a straight wire. No resistor on the ground wire there. And a look at the tree here. You can see the little balls on there. The wires are still showing through, but actually they don't look too bad. I actually put a little piece of tinsel in there too. And at the very tippy top of the tree, I've got a little gold star, gold star at the top. I don't know if you can see that. I got that off a weather vane that I sacrificed for the tree. And there we go. We've got the town square lit up with a Christmas tree for the folks in town there. Well, this has been a fun little project, and I just barely got it done before Christmas Day. So from all of us here at, all of me here at the Minneapolis Northwestern and Scale Model Railroad, wishing everyone happy holidays, season's greetings, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thanks so much for all the support from the viewers and subscribers. Wishing everyone a great new year. Y'all take it easy and have a safe holiday.